and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and it's finally time to review an Alan Moore comic. Nope. Also nope. Look, you can see the name of the video. There's no point being... I don't want to know about that one. No, of all the works of Alan Moore's varied career to cover, it's Youngblood. Quick refresher for those of you less inclined to follow this medium. Alan Moore is either one of the greatest comic book writers of all time, or he's a douchebag who's highly overrated and whose best work is long behind him. And here I am all, why not both? Most of the time when news about Alan Moore comes up, it's because he's gone off on a very angry rant about the mainstream comic industry, but the funny thing is, that's only because people always ask him about it to get that reaction. As indicated by that little bit I did at the start, Alan Moore has written some of the most critically acclaimed works of the industry, probably most recognizably Watchmen, aka Citizen Kane for superhero comics. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, DC probably feels that it most certainly is, which is where we get to the whole Alan Moore ranting about mainstream comics and all. Moore did a lot of work for DC back in the day, and Watchmen was one of them. His contract stipulated that the rights to the book would go to him once the book left print. It was a deal that made sense at the time, because back then, trade paperback collections were not as frequently made, and eventually it'd leave print and he'd have it. Problem, of course, is that with that reputation with the book, Watchmen has never left print. Basically, DC keeps having this propensity for screwing over Moore on royalties and rights to his work, and don't even get him started on movie adaptations. Yeah, he hates Hollywood's adaptations of his works. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was the one that really clinched it, and I recall reading an interview with him where he talked about how Hollywood wanted to originally make it into, like, League of Extraordinary Pets or something. That being said, not all of his anger seems justified. Over time, he has really gotten annoyed by the dominance of superhero comics in the medium and people's enjoyment of said superhero comics. That they're meant to be enjoyed by the youngins, and the fact that so many adults still enjoy them is a bad thing, and that no one could do original things, just build on old continuity. Says the man who decided to get a bunch of classic literary characters and either made porn of them or built original stories from their continuity. And still wrote superhero books that were very clearly meant for adults, since Watchmen is just as much for little kids as Trouble was. Point is, he's kind of a legend, but he's not some perfect guy. Though saying that, be warned that tragedy may befall me because he is also some kind of wizard. And no, I don't just mean the beard. He's an occultist and practitioner of ceremonial magic. But aside from all that, what the hell does this guy have to do with Youngblood? Well, let's head back a few years to 1993. Bear in mind that Image Comics started out trying to be a haven for artists and writers to have creative freedom and to own their own properties, which Moore was all in favor of. He created a miniseries called 1963 for Image, which was basically an homage to Silver Age Marvel. Now, what happened with 1963 is a story in itself, but it got him ingratiated with several Image creators, including Liefeld, who asked him to work on one of his billions of characters and books that he had created, Supreme. Supreme was basically a pastiche of Superman, which in Liefeld terms was basically just Superman, but an asshole whose origin changed every 5 minutes. Moore hated Supreme, and thus had one condition: let him do whatever the hell he wanted on it. Fortunately, he didn't want to do some dark, gritty Supreme story to reinvent the character, but rather the opposite. Moore had made a name for himself basically in telling some of the darkest stories in comics at the time. The Killing Joke, Watchmen, Swamp Thing, and frankly he felt that maybe it was time he got away from all that, so he turned Supreme into a fun, metatextual story on superheroes and what made them so fun. It's why his comments later in life have been so confusing. In 1997, Liefeld was forced out of Image Comics because of all the bullcrap he had pulled. Potential embezzlement, missing deadlines, etc. Moore himself was starting to grow distant from Image as well because of all the internal politics going on. Again, a lot of this tied into the 1963 book. So since so much of Youngblood was tied up in the informal Image universe, so to speak, Liefeld wanted to create a fully fleshed out universe for his new company, Awesome Entertainment. Also known as the greatest comic company ever! And that brings us to today's miniseries, Youngblood Judgment Day, which basically serves as a relaunch for the universe Youngblood takes place in. I've been highly critical of Youngblood's concept, writing, artwork, characterization, everything. Just everything. I am critical of everything about it because it is terrible. But can Alan Moore be the one to actually get something good out of it? Well, let's dig into Youngblood Judgment Day and find out.
Youngblood. Youngblood. Youngblood.
While the book technically has 4 issues, the last is an aftermath issue that's not really important to the plot, and the patron only asked for these initial 3, which aren't even really number 1 to 3, but Judgment Day Alpha, Judgment Day Omega, and Final Judgment. Which, considering Omega is supposed to be the last and Liefeld's own propensity for dumb names, feels like it should have been called, like, Maximum Omega or something. Awesomega. The covers are fine, a triptych showing off a crap ton of characters all gathered around Supreme, holding a book that's emanating a bright light. Actual picture of me every time I open the Technis Imperative. But yeah, it's no George Perez, but it's pretty dang good, especially since it's supposed to be about this entire universe of characters, although for some reason the font they used for the title had the men in Judgment run together. I'm sorry, it's Judgment Day, not Judgment Day. We open in 1997, though given it's just supposed to be the present, one wonders why it doesn't just say the present. It's the 30th of August in Washington, the first shivering witch breath of fall in the air. Linkara finally gets out the episode that was scheduled for 2 weeks ago and promises to get back on schedule. It's Nightsaber, who was introduced in the tail end of the first volume of the book, real name Mickey Toombs. If you asked him, Mickey would say he's been out celebrating, but that isn't true. Mickey's just been out drinking. Tomato, juice that's used in a Bloody Mary. There's no one to celebrate with. No friends, just teammates who don't even know Mickey's name. Yeah, well that's his fault for not coming to the team building exercises they hold every Saturday. Last one was cross-country skiing. They call him Nightsaber. He calls them Drongos, but under his breath. Gee, I wonder why he doesn't have any friends to celebrate his birthday with. Donald Mausoleums here enters Youngblood headquarters and drops off his passkey with Sentinel, who we definitely haven't seen in a while in Youngblood proper. Wonder if he ended up over in Team Youngblood. We'll find out eventually whenever we get to it. Anyway, Nightsaber staggers to the elevator and laments in his mind that it's not just that he's turning 30 without any friends, but also that he hasn't had sex in a while. Just keep piling on all these reasons we're supposed to care about him and what happens to him, Alan. He decides to drunkenly hit on Riptide, another Youngblood member whom we haven't seen in forever, and goes to her quarters. However, she's not there, and he just kinda goes in and passes out on her bed. He thinks a lot of dumb stuff about being 30. Stuff about his dad. Stuff about how his real name isn't Toombs. It's Mini Crypts. While the main story is drawn by Liefeld, appropriate since it's his universe and characters, there are flashback sequences that take place at various points in this new universe's history that are drawn by different artists, starting with this one. Cutting back to 1868, where a group of Western characters are meeting up. Night Eagle, the Brimstone Kid, and Kid Thunder. All 3 are introduced in the Judgment Day stuff, which does not surprise me. I was thinking at first that these guys had pretty spiffy designs for Liefeld characters, So naturally, they are not. Alan Moore invented them for this revised history as pastiches of other heroes, along with legendary artist Gil Kane. In fact, the Aftermath issue was the last full-length comic Gil Kane drew before his death to lymphoma in the year 2000. Anyway, Kid Thunder wants the other two to consult him on an item he procured from a villain inside a briefcase. When he shows them the object, they both warn him that it's an artifact of the gods, and that he should abandon the object and run like hell, which they promptly do. But he says he needs to hang on to it as he waits to confront the guy he stole it from, Deliverance Drew, and his sidekick, Conveyance Carl. Back in 1997, Nightsaber wakes up to see Badrock, Vogue, and Masada standing over him. And there's blood everywhere. When he storms out into the living room area, thinking that Riptide has accused him of trying to assault her, he discovers the place wrecked and her dead body under the overturned couch. Although, given the artwork quality, it's entirely possible that's just her arm and nothing else. I mean, the proportions of the couch compared to her arm do seem a little wonky. Nightsaber denies doing this while pretending his testicles are that big. Masada leads Nightsaber back to his own room, while his shocked expression changes to clenching rage because art. And Vogue wonders what they should do about this situation. Badrock wants to report it to Shaft and Sentinel, but Vogue is reluctant, wanting to cover it up. This is not an ordinary murder. It involves us, and we're not ordinary people. I mean, most people in your country do not have spines that go in L shape. The world sees us as titans, like your movie stars, but even more so. There has never been a superhero murder before. To your media, this will be a primal event, an ancient drama acted out by beings stepped from legend. Except instead of godlike figures, it'll be you people, who have already covered up murders perpetrated by your own members before. How is Sci-Fire, by the way? We cut to 436 AD, this time for a Conan the Barbarian pastiche known as Bram the Berserk. Out of the north he came, with drugged fire in his eyes, with foam about his lips, and mighty empires fell before him. We later discovered he was infected with rabies. As a boy, he had sacked Rome with Alaric's marauding Visigoths, and as a man had ridden with Attila. As a teenager, he partied at Emperor Theodosius II's wedding and had money riding on the chariot race in the Hippodrome. He lost. In the Frankish lands they feared him, and in faraway Byzantium they trembled at his name. In Indochina they groan and say, "Oh, that asshole!" Bram, son of Buri, Bram the Mercenary, Bram the Conqueror, Bram the Freebooter, Bramo the Thirst Mutilator. Bram and his forces are charging into a castle owned by the warlock Magnar, and thanks to a traitor inside the castle, Bram is able to storm in and kill Magnar. Looting the castle for magical objects, he finds a lectern with something on it that has images on it that move and speak to him. Back in 1997, Shaft is informed of what happened and says they'll have to call the police. Sentinel enters and asks what's up while looking as pissed off as ever. Then again, I would be too if I had to enter a room backwards. Seriously, look at this panel. Why is he facing away from them when he comes in? Why is he so pissed off? Vogue pleads to not inform the police about this, but Shaft says they have to. But they're gonna call someone with superhero sympathies. Savage Dragon. Yeah, I guess Rob must have still been on good terms with Eric Larson, because Savage Dragon is still a part of this, despite the whole point of the series being to separate his work from the rest of Image. Go figure. Wait, isn't Savage Dragon in Chicago? And they're in DC? What the hell is he gonna do? Time for another flashback, this time to Battlin' Baron and his Roarin' Roughnecks in 1943, a Howling Commandos pastiche. Okay, you gold brick dog faces, listen up! We're throwing everything we got against Rommel's Africa Corps. Rommel's got the Iron Cross helping him.
Rommel, you magnificent bastard, I read your book!
While the Roughnecks roar and run off, another soldier talks to a dying man known as the Phantom Aviator. He says he knows that the Nazis will shell their position in 5 minutes and that he'll die thanks to an object he's carrying with him, a package that he hands off to the soldier and says that he needs to get it out of there. And that Prophet, that other Liefeld character introduced in the second issue of Youngblood, was the one who gave it to him before vanishing. Back to 1997, Savage Dragon fills them in on how this is going to go down. The legal system, up to this point, has never dealt with a superhero victim with a superhero suspect and superhero witnesses, so they'll need to set up a special courtroom specifically run by superheroes as long as standard law personnel are represented. Judge, prosecution, defense, etc. Well, right now, I think that the law might want to, investigate the crime before they worry about the trial. Savage Dragon goes to do just that, process the crime scene while the others discuss who they'll call upon to help with this. They've also informed Graves, the government liaison of Youngblood, who is pissed, but is more upset about Nightsaber than the dead superheroine. Flashback time again, to 1918 and a Tarzan pastiche named Xantar. Xantar finds a tribe worshipping a skeleton of a dead explorer, which is still clutching an object inside of a bag. Xantar grabs the bag and runs off, and back to the present. By the by, Xantar's tagline is White God of the Congo. 1990s, pastiche of casual racism. But it was invented for this comic, so 1990s, casual racism. Back in 1997, Supreme arrives and agrees to let the team hold the trial in his Citadel Supreme. Die Hard has tracked down some old superheroes who also have legal experience, with Judge Catherine McKinnon, whose superhero identity was as a Ghostbuster. The prosecutor is a woman named Shona Shane, who used to act as the superheroine's sidekick Lady Day, and their defense attorney is Toby Tyler, the young former sidekick of a superhero known as the Fisherman. Toby needs to examine any video footage they have in the place. While Youngblood doesn't have any security cameras at all in their HQ, which seems like an odd security deficiency, but privacy, I guess, whatever. Die Hard records visual memory of everything he encounters, though only going back 6 months. We do get some character stuff with this as well, since Die Hard admits that he's uncomfortable with people knowing about his inner workings or seeing him without his mask on, which he needs to take off to get the data. It's not much, but at least more understood that these people needed to have some more personality and individual wants and feelings. The most I got out of Die Hard in the original 10 issues of Youngblood was Die Hard attacking people with his crotch. Toby heads with Supreme to the courtroom to meet with the judge and prosecution, as well as plan for the witnesses he needs to call. Hell, we even get a character moment between Sentinel and Shaft about how overwhelming this all is. Me and you have headed our respective halves of Youngblood all these years, and suddenly it feels like we're beneath a shadow. It feels like the sun is setting on everything we've built. On the plus side, the shadow hanging over us will keep the sun out of our eyes. In 530 AD, the Force Ghost of Merlin meets with a figure called the Winter Knight, who entrusts the knight with that mysterious object again while Camelot falls. Contained within are all the songs our king, Richard Harris, has been singing. Keep them secret, keep them safe. And once more to 1997. At the Citadel Supreme, the trial is about to get underway. Not sure how much time has passed during all this, to be honest. It still feels like it's supposed to be the same day. Shaft, Sentinel, and Toby enter the courtroom. Damn. Sentinel, you'd better come and look at this. For once, justice isn't blindfolded. It's masked. And, like, half the people in this collage, including the defendant, are not wearing masks. Also, we finally get a reason why Rob always draws characters with their feet so far apart. He needs to have dramatic camera angles like this one with the three looking at him from between his legs. Though this kind of also has the effect of making it seem like Nightsaber is giant-sized. Anyway, that ends the Alpha issue. The Omega issue begins with Shona Shane recounting the events of the last issue and some new details. Nightsaber went to her room at 12:30 a.m., and Riptide returned to Youngblood HQ around 1:15, and the time of death was at 1:30. Shona speculates that he attempted to make advances on her, she rejected him, and one way or another, a fight broke out between the two, and he killed her with his staff weapon. One interesting detail to note, though, is that the carpet was soaked. She thinks it was from the battle, but the audience had seen when Nightsaber entered the place that her carpet was already wet. Although that could just mean there was a problem with her washing machine. What? Happened to me last year, after all. Flooding sucks. While there's a recess, Savage Dragon and Badrock discuss how things are going and how odd it is that so many old superheroes are being called in for this case, pointing out one in particular known as Black Baron, who was at the crime scene doing tarot readings right on the floor in front of Riptide's body. Hate to be the one to tell you this, madam, but your future's not looking so good. What's worse, thanks to some other recent events that had occurred in the related books, people are starting to question whether superheroes should be a thing at all. The trial resumes, and apparently we're skipping the defense's opening statements or the prosecution's case, because Toby just goes right ahead and calls his first witness for the defense, Glory. You know, Glory, that woman from Glory and Evangeline, aka the Goddessy, aka that comic that features Jesus fighting the Greek gods, aka Jesus, Christian martial artist. Well, maybe your confusion is rather because clearly he's calling Glory's ass to the stand given this panel. The judge is sitting down and higher up. How tall is Glory if her ass is level with the judge's face?
Space is warped and time is bendable.
The front of her doesn't do any favors either. I'm half convinced I need to censor nipples poking through her swimsuit costume top. Anyway, Toby's convinced that there's a larger conspiracy at work with this murder, and thus wants to lay the groundwork for it, which is why there are so many superheroes here as witnesses, as opposed to just Youngblood members. Glory is kind of a Wonder Woman ripoff or pastiche, so she testifies about how her family actually predates the universe itself, being gods and all. Your Honor, objection! I hope Mr. King isn't trying to link this case to the Big Bang. Oh, but I do, Your Honor, for I say that the real killer was a cloud of hydrogen. Anyway, while the Omega issue doesn't have the same kind of establishing flashbacks as before of various new characters, it does have a few in the testimony. So Glory talks about a gift her mother received from the god Hermes, a book that contains, well, everything. All stories, past, present, and future. Basically, it's the Book of Destiny from DC, and equally as dangerous. It's all knowledge possible, and everything that can happen, or has ever happened, is within it. Glory's mother was supposed to place it on Earth as soon as life began to arise, but she couldn't resist taking a peek. And as a result, even she and Glory became part of the story of everything, and thus affected by it. The book was eventually found and passed down through the ages, and that is the object we kept seeing in the flashbacks. But the more interesting detail is that that book was present in Riptide's quarters a few weeks ago, as evidenced by the recording Die Hard had taken. It shows the book in Miss Creel's room. See, it's that very obvious book right next to her gajillion copies of the same book. It's the only one colored differently. He calls his next witness Giganthro, which is a glorious name for a character, so naturally, yes, he's an Alan Moore creation from Supreme. Along with him is a superheroine named Future Girl, who's, well, from the future, 25th century to be exact. She will translate for Giganthro since, well,
I'm just a caveman.
his story involves him fighting a giant dinosaur with a human head that looks horrifying, but the actual meat of it involves him finding the book in a cave, but losing it during that fight. Shona asks, if Future Girl is really from that far ahead in the future, why not just tell them how the case will end? And she does so, specifically stating that a Youngblood member will be convicted for Riptide's murder, which is not really great. Unfortunately, we also have to see Troll. Yeah, he's here for the trial too. Geez, you hear that? Judy Jetson there just as good as said that Nightsaber was guilty in front of the whole court. Talk about giving a dog a bad name and hanging it. No offense intended. Run taken. Why is Crypto the super dog there? Anyway, Troll is called to the stand next. Is there like no cross-examination here at all? Troll is revealed to be a member of a semi-magical race of trolls. Ugh, now I've got to imagine there's more than one of them. In fact, we learn that Troll hides his true appearance. He would normally be furry and blue, but he shaves his body regularly and applies makeup to hide that. Ah yes, that was totally evident during that time we saw Troll taking a shower and then vomited in our brains forever. But anyway, he encountered the book in the 5th century. He was the traitor that helped Bram overthrow Magnar. When Bram had the book, he ruled the land for many years using its wisdom, and Troll was right alongside him the whole way. During one of his last adventures, Bram gave Troll the book to keep it out of evil hands. And he also discovered that you can rewrite the book in your own favor. I profited in small ways from the book until a couple of centuries later. That's when I lost the book to a scheming, dishonest charlatan named Merlin. Lost it at cards, since you ask. I don't, but I do ask how you used it for centuries when Bram got the book in 436 AD, but the Winter Knight got it less than a century later in 530 AD. Toby establishes that over time, the book eventually came to America, and that the book was not present in Riptide's library a few months ago, and that the book is missing after her murder. Thus, he intends to prove that the book is the motive for said murder. Using a mystical heroine known as the Maximage, they summon the spirit of Night Eagle, who talks about Deliverance Drew using the book to fight demons, but also to be a colossal dick to people, including a woman who acted as his servant whom he impregnated. Kid Thunder wanted to rescue her from that life, wife and knew that the book was somehow tied to that, so he took it and that led to their confrontation. Drew shot Kid Thunder, but he used his own blood to cross out Drew from the book, killing him. Later, Night Eagle helped him bury the book in one of his tribe's sacred sites. Judgment Day! Learn the history of a book! Next witness is Dr. Daniel Conqueror, basically from a pastiche of DC's Challengers of the Unknown, except here it's the Conquerors of the Uncanny. Because when you think of scientists trying to explore the bizarre and unknown, you think Conqueror. He talks about his grandfather, who was the explorer in the jungle whose remains were worshipped, his son having been along for the ride, and when he and his wife died, his son grew up in the jungle to become Xantar. Xantar passed the book on to Prophet, and the judge adjourns for the day because of how long all these stories are getting, much like me wondering where the hell we're going with all these stories. As Shaft walks off, there are some conversations between various characters, including between two superheroines from the 60s. I mean, in the 60s I was considered well-developed, though the vest hid a lot of it. These days I feel flat-chested. Don't worry, I know this lady named Frankenfran who can fix that right up for you. Shaft is pulled aside by Graves, the aforementioned liaison between Youngblood and the government, and informs him that Nightsaber is his son. Which makes sense, considering Nightsaber's pseudonym is Toombs, but I just figured, given Rob Liefeld characters, they were both just an attempt at being more extreme! However, he's not here about Nightsaber. It turns out that the murder and trial and everything have been bringing a lot of bad press to the administration, and they've decided to cut funding to Youngblood altogether. I'm saying that as of noon today, Youngblood ceased to exist. I'm saying it's over. Oh no, so terrible. That ends the Omega issue and brings us to Final Judgment. Man, I wish this was called Final Justice instead. Just imagine Jodan Baker looking at that book and going, "You think you could take me? Go head on. It's your move." We begin Final Judgment with Youngblood flying back to the Citadel the next day and discussing how much it sucks that their funding has been cut. Sentinel is distressed about some of the revelations this has brought about, like Die Hard recording everything all the time. I guess this case is full of revelations. Revelations as in apocalypse. Revelations as in Judgment Day. Revelations as in Hellraiser 9. Yeah, guys, don't try to justify your stupid title that doesn't actually have anything to do with the story. It's not working. Nearby, Toby is combing over video records. He suspected that Troll had the best motive to steal the book, but learning more details about Kid Thunder, as well as a letter he got that morning, made him think in a different direction, which he's checking the video footage for. He finds something and asks for Supreme to send some of his android servants to check it out. The next witness is Blake Barron, who's actually the same Baron who led the Roarin' Roughnecks in World War II. The soldier who got the book from the Phantom Aviator used it to become a superhero in his own right called Storybook Smith, summoning fictional characters to fight battles. After Barron's testimony, Toby reveals the letter he got, which was from an elderly woman who had married Smith. Smith is kind of a pastiche of the Justice Society's Johnny Thunder, though in this case he's also the great-grandson of that woman who Kid Thunder was trying to help save. The book was stolen from him in a robbery and he fell into depression, leaving without knowing that he had fathered a daughter with the now elderly woman, who is revealed to be Riptide's own mother. When Riptide learned about her parentage, she sought out the book for herself, but the trial is interrupted by Supreme, who says that his robots are back. With them is the book, and Sentinel's wife, Elizabeth. I wonder if Mr. Langston would like this opportunity to explain to the court what it is and how he came by it. Well, see, Riptide wanted me to, scan the all-powerful book of all knowledge and godlike power to, sell it on eBay. You're not buying this, are you? Sentinel says nothing. That's too bad. You know, a lot of legal cases can be very frustrating.
Your world frightens and confuses me.
There's always somebody who refuses to come clean. There's always some part of the story that never gets filled in. Or it's like this story, where it's filled in a bit too much. And so Toby reads from the book and explains Sentinel's own backstory as the leader of Team Youngblood. The original backstory has been crossed out and written over. In the original, as Marcus Langston, his father was a crook who had stolen the book and then given it to him thinking it worthless. But then he would die by the age of 19 in a liquor store robbery. In the new version of the story, the teenage Marcus rewrote it where he becomes the Iron Man ripoff. Or possibly pastiche, given everything else Moore has done with his stuff. But it just wasn't enough for him to just be a hero. He wanted more and more violence and shooting and all that stuff. Weirdly enough, in this panel, there's an entire dialogue box that's repeated. It's weird, like they put it in both spots and we're going to decide later which one to go with, but they forgot to choose and so it printed with both. In any case, this new version of events for the heroes transitions from a silver age into a dark age, a meta commentary on the state of comics, and indeed Youngblood itself at the time. Heroes were motivated by money or were weird mutants and bazooka-wielding cyborgs. I know! Isn't it radical? Our universe had been sucked into a bad action movie of constant, meaningless mayhem, and the star of that movie was its writer and director, Marcus Langston. Or by his true name, Michael Bay! Riptide, during a barbecue at Marcus's house, recognized the book and took it. When Sentinel realized what happened, he had tried to sneak into her quarters to get it, but Riptide arrived home early and the two fought, with him killing her, and he wrote in Nightsaber as the culprit, including the opening narration we had seen in the Alpha issue. Toby demands Sentinel admit his guilt in all this, and subsequently, how does this story end? Joke's on you, Toby. George R.R. Martin is gonna write the sequel, so the ending will never come! Sentinel attacks, saying he's gonna get his happily ever after as he tries to reclaim the book. Supreme and his forces take him down, but he still got the book. He plans to write in it that the Citadel explodes with no one but him surviving, but Shaft knocks the book out of his hand with an arrow. The book falls away and Sentinel is captured, with Supreme later telling Prophet about his brief trial and imprisonment and, well, Supreme calls it the Hell of Mirrors, but, you know, the Phantom Zone. We also learn that Sentinel himself was a descendant of Kid Thunder. Not that that really matters all that much. Die Hard thinks that Youngblood is still done with, though he does mention that Shaft was talking to a former hero named Waxman who was making some kind of financial offer. The various older heroes discuss the idea of coming out of retirement. It's funny, for more than 10 years, that book plunged our world into a grim moral darkness. Maybe that's finally over now. They say it will depend on who gets the book next, and so our comic ends with the book falling in front of some homeless girl, who finds it and begins reading. Our ending text as, Once Upon a Time. This comic is almost good. It is not, unfortunately. It doesn't suck, but it has way too many problems for it to be considered something of quality. Like I said, Liefeld doing the artwork for everything set in the present made sense given it's his universe and his company and all that, but his artwork is terrible. He's not good at backgrounds, he's not good at poses, he's not good at faces, and yet you'd think with him just drawing endless scenes of people standing around pontificating that would keep him from his usual artistic flubs, but it doesn't. Not all the flashback sequences are all that much better, especially given the rushed nature of the short segments, but plenty of them still have much better penciling. I was quite fond of Gil Kane's work in this in particular, but even putting aside the artwork, the story itself is not well told. Don't get me wrong, Moore tries his damnedest, and the meta-commentary on retcons and the idea of a villain who wants to rewrite his own history to make things better is a good one, and might be the basis of 1 or 2 events coming to Event Comics Month next year, hint hint, wink wink. But the revelations contained within the story concerning Sentinel don't seem to have any real impact emotionally for anyone. The best we get is Sentinel's wife being horrified that her entire life was rewritten for her without her choice. But Shaft, who is basically acting as Sentinel's friend and confidant throughout the story, just seems to shrug off all this. Nightsaber, the guy who's actually on trial, is barely a factor in the story other than as a scapegoat. Moore is clearly having a more fun time with all these character pastiches he invented for this new universe than the actual Youngblood members. Riptide is basically fridged in this, killed to advance the stories of the male characters. On the subject of the new characters, yeah, that's another problem with the book. I get the idea of seeing the full history of the book, since it shows us the full history of the awesome universe through how the book makes its way through various characters, but in terms of the trial and the actual story of Judgment Day, there's absolutely no need to see this stuff. I can sum it up in a single sentence. The book was passed on through various people throughout history until it wound up with Sentinel. The end. I suppose Riptide's history with it is also kind of essential, but not as much other than as the motivation for Sentinel to kill her and take it back. This also begs the question of how Toby spotted all this. Did he know about the book beforehand? By all accounts, he and the fisherman never encountered it before based on all this information, so why would he assume this random book is what was the real purpose behind everything and learn its backstory? Basically, these flashbacks mostly serve as padding for a disjointed, inaccurate form of a trial. Apparently, the trade paperback's introduction emphasized how it was a story about what happens when a superhero goes on trial, but that's barely the plot in this thing. Once again, the premise of Youngblood is just kind of cheap window dressing for a different story. And admittedly, there are good ideas here. Moore is obviously doing his best to try to make this interesting, but the way the story is told to get there is padded and unnecessary. The ideas are good, but not the execution. Next time, we're not done with Liefeld. I've been wanting to tackle this one for a long while. It's another pairing of Rob Liefeld with a good writer, as we look at a two-parter that Rob did with Gail Simone in the pages of Teen Titans. I'm saying it's the flow regulator. We have been over this.
What we've been going over is that the flow regulator has been replaced half a dozen times and it hasn't made a difference. It's the engine core itself. The Cybermats burnt through the whole thing when they disabled it.
Then why do all my readings keep saying that the engine is fine?
Actually go inside the damn thing and tell me it's working fine.
Poyo, if we go up against Destro Galga and it picks the contest, we're gonna need Neutro up and running. We've gotta get this thing sorted sooner rather than later.
Linkara, there's a call coming in for you through the channel the Temlins provided.
I've been expecting this. Have it routed down here.
Sure. Super genius mad scientist, and you've got me as a glorified secretary.
Are the Temlins contacting you?
No, not exactly. After Skarn's little outburst and the big hubbub between Homunculus and Billy Tor, the Temlins are requiring the remaining contestants to each contact at least 3 other champions and just do a little dialogue with each other in the interests of good sportsmanship or whatever. I had to talk to Pylo yesterday. For a bunch of rocks, it's surprisingly insightful.
Alright. I'll leave you to that while I deal with the engine core.
It's the flow regulator! Hi, you've reached Linkara's giant robot repairs, where you're right and your assistant knows it!
What?
Oh, nothing, just a disagreement over something. Hi, I'm Linkara, and you are the Blue Knight of Titan, yes?
You can call me Tyler, but yes. What's this disagreement about?
Oh, we were doing prep work on Neutro, my giant robot. If we end up fighting against Destro Galga, I need it fully operational, but we've been having some issues.
You're gonna need it alright, but not against Destro Galga.
Oh? Why is that?
Because I am taking on Destro Galga with my giant robot, the Meg. It'll be me you're taking on with yours.
Ooh, well, look who's confident. Does that mean you're up against Destro Galga this round?
Nah, they just announced it. He's going up against that aviator.
Really? That's gonna be a short fight. Ooh, she flies a space fighter. Because if there's one thing that giant monsters are known for, it's being beaten by planes.
Ha! I know, right?
Then again, it'd be nice to see anything going on. It's been like months since the last contest update.
For you it has. For me, it's been an hour since the last broadcast. Since all the universes participating or watching operate on different timescales, the Temlins will suspend the contest in one universe just to make sure it all balances out later.
I suppose it also allows contestants who are heavily injured to recover?
Yeah, pretty much. So you're the one that took down Lord Vice?
Yeah, and a few other things, yeah.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. I've done a bit of dimension hopping myself. I ran into a world that Vice had previously conquered, and it wasn't pretty. Good news is, once the shades went out, it's pretty easy to make things right again.
That's good to hear, at least. We tried before to reorganize a few of the worlds he had taken, but others, well, power vacuum, civil war. We tried to help, but it's not like we have a lot of resources.
We'll never think it was a wrong call to make. Evil needs to be stopped, no matter what others think.
Yeah, I read your dossier. You really split up from your team?
We had been fighting an intergalactic sorcerer who rained death and destruction on our world. The other Knights of Titan thought driving him off would be good enough. I disagreed and I went after him on my own, and I stopped him before he could come back and finish the job.
I hear ya. You still keep in touch with him?
No, they don't want to see me. It's just as well. They cramp my style at times.
Well, you do you, sir. Any idea who you're up against next?
Well, I'm sure we'll find out soon. Anyways, I'm gonna head out and do some drills. It's good talking to you.
You too.
Oh, one last thing though.
Yeah?
Be aware. Vice had supporters out there. People who agreed with his methods of stopping interdimensional menaces. Watch your back, Linkara. Someone out there may have it in for you.
I'll keep that in mind, thanks.
Don't mention it.
Hello, my friends. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.